Kristján, we've both shared the stage today, and we've heard from Chloe Smith and Hung Lee. I just wanted to reflect on one thing actually that I took from your talk, which is everybody looks at the advent of artificial intelligence and automation technology and goes, "Wow, it's big, it's huge." And what you just said to me in the talk there was, actually, do you know what? You can start with a tiny workflow or a tiny adjustment and just see how that goes. And I think that's a little bit of a mini revelation.
Yeah, great question, Perry. I think it's the reality is like all the talks you see everywhere, they're all about the big why.
Yeah.
They're all about the why this will change the world and the big investments that are going into it, and et cetera. But people are missing the how. They're missing like, how do I actually do this? And the reality is that if you want to start using AI around you, you got to learn the building blocks. It's like a Lego chip.
Yeah.
And that means mapping up how you are doing it today and kind of adding AI into that to see, oh, if I would add AI here, I would be doing it differently.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the magic happens. Now, once you get that building block going, you can repeat that. And all of a sudden, you kind of have added small AIs into your processes, seeing some productivity.
Yeah.
Step number 3 is kind of the real magic.
Yep.
When you start to redefine your entire processes, because now you have AI talking to AI. So let's take an example here. Like in the first example, you had let's say there's an employee request coming in, and typically you would handle a request if you're an HR person. You'd kind of review it, you'd read the stuff, you'd look at the policy, you'd come to a conclusion if something is okay or not, move forward or not. Somebody else should, go over it as well, or whatever it may be. This is something you can configure in AI to look at the same information that you would have as a human, and you can tell it instructions on how to come to a conclusion. So all of a sudden, you're seeing these requests flooding in, and they're coming up with the same conclusion you would have.
Yep.
Now, you could have it like check every time if you agree or not. So you can kind of do it step by step.
Yep.
And then if it does what you want it to do 100 times, 1,000 times, you can just push on automation and maybe audit it.
Yeah.
But once you've gotten to that stage, you can really start to think, what if we do this completely differently?
Yeah.
And that's really where some of the true magic starts to kick in. You stop seeing like 10% or 20% or 50% time saved, and you just start to see 100%. We automated something is completely gone.
Yep.
And but I would still argue, like I mentioned in my talk, like take one problem, solve it. It could be something super basic, and then you can, you started with the basic math, and you can start to do algebra, whatever it is. That's really how people get going with this.
And it comes back to a kind of principle of mine when I've been working in organization design, change, workforce planning, right? We talk about work and we tend to have it as a massive thing. And I talk about tasks and I talk about activities. I'm almost like, we talk about a job, but that really is made up of lots and lots of tasks that have to be done to a certain kind of standard with certain skills to get that done to create the quality or the value that comes through it. So I really like what we're kind of painting a picture for people here, which is the brush strokes, not just the whole kind of canvas. And I think when people can get a hold on that, they could start to see possibilities and opportunities that otherwise just looks like it's kind of a big mash of colour. And I wonder what that might do to things like decision making and use of information and knowledge at the highest level in organizations, because I get the sense that the reluctance is probably at the top of the organization, not in the throes of work.
I definitely agree it's in the top to some extent, but I think most people want to work in an organization where they're able to use the newest tech.
Yeah.
And because they know they're not going to be there forever. They want to move on. They want to skill themselves up. And so so that's why I think in general, people are like, hey, let me have this.
Yeah.
On the top, they're like, a lot of people are worried about compliance and data and laws. And of course you need to comply with all that. But what really fascinates me in this regard is just like how this change happens and how it's sort of like, a lot of workers were just like, we're not going to use AI. But then all of a sudden, like everyone in their organization were just using it in their personal lives at home.
Yeah.
And then a lot of ideas started to come along, and these orgs just started to, I don't know. So I think the buy-in comes. I think the first step is really just having people try chat-based AI to begin with.
Yeah.
Just play with it.
Yeah.
Use it daily. Instead of just solving a task, ask the AI like, hey, I'm about to solve this task. This is how I'm thinking about doing it. Do it. But to your kind of point there, the problem with a lot of orgs is that they think they have a defined process on how it works. But the reality is when it hits a certain state, it's just like, ask Jane.
Yep.
And she will know the answer.
Yep.
And so if you're truly thinking about automation as an organization, you have to kind of go like, what is it that Jane knows? And unless you map it up, like that the knowledge of an organization lives within hundreds of thousands of people, with all the people within the org, and kind of that is the true knowledge of the org and how they get stuff done.
You took me to a flashback of a client where we had to label it idiosyncrasies, right? Because they were so gifted in their craft and individuals acquired certain ways. It wasn't documented anywhere. If they left, it would have been taken away and somebody else would have had to reinvent it. And I think that's what we're starting to see here, isn't it? That we can codify things like that and we can capture them, index them, use them, and then that becomes institutional knowledge and know-how that otherwise sits in people's heads, that sometimes they hold to ransom. So it isn't about creating kind of people's detachment from their craft. It is just saying this has value beyond just you.
Yeah.
And that value creation thing is really important to me. So I suppose, how are you sort of seeing people attach value when it comes to using AI tools and automation?
So I think this has been a big changer, actually. I think like maybe last year, 2 years ago, people were more on the brakes, but now you're starting to see companies actually using it, using the benefits. And I think it's a simple kind of ROI exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple, I mean, it's all for most of the orgs that I'm seeing using this, the productivity increase is the number one reason.
Yep.
Yes, of course, you want to see employee experience go up and customer experience, but like productivity is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And what they simply do is just like they need to take time into saying, how are we doing this particular thing today? This task.
Yeah.
How many times does it happen every year?
Yeah.
And how much is that costing us?
Yeah.
And if we can like shave off 10% or 50%, that makes that justification. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can have that baseline, but like, unless you have that kind of reasoning doc in mind, you're going to get the top level to go, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, like there are a ton of companies that are really efficient because they kind of play soccer like a team. You know, you push the ticket to Jane and she pushes it back to John, and it kind of works. But I would argue that like every single organization in the world is soon going to be having AI embedded into everything that they do across the org. Of course, complying within laws and everything. Yeah. And if your org doesn't do it, like you're going to be doing things more expensively, with less experience. Like it's just. But I mean, but I would also like on your end, like I would love to hear, like the top struggles that you hear. And when you meet an HR person, that wants to start to use AI at the org, what's what's stopping them?
Well, I think for a start, going back to your point about organizations that don't use it, by accident, they might become artisan organizations because they've sort of just not taken advantage of it. But that's part of the problem I do encounter when I go into clients, which is there's just too much work in the stack for HR. Yeah. So the demand is absolutely overflowing. And part of that is because there are still manual handles being cranked or very slow and cumbersome digital processes. So there's definitely something about optimization and efficiency that should be driving a lot more of what they do. And so your examples are a classic way of taking it off people's desks, but still giving people outcomes. That is absolutely the first thing to create the space for HR to then go, what can I do next that's even more complex or more demanding of me? And so, even things like investigations, casework and things like that, we're seeing a rise in that because of layoffs and the current economic pressures. So a lot of HR people are saying, I'm just spending so much time in like mediative conflict environments, avoiding tribunals. And then the other one is what we've talked about, which is where HR people are like, oh my God, all I've got to do is like change upon change upon change. And also keep the business running in its recruitment campaigns and its reward and its engagement surveys. So it's pure volume, pure overflow. And yet the answer is, if you can start an automation trail, guess what? It will liberate you up to do some more progressive thinking to kind of get ahead of the curve. And so that's the challenge I see. They want to do it. They're just absolutely shackled in the here and now. So it's almost like their aspirations in the future, but their reality is in the present. And it's really hard for them to decouple from that.
Well, and I get that. I'm seeing maybe two things that are happening that's interesting across the board here. So the first one is sort of the democratization of building these things. So if you kind of think about like you needed to be a tech nerd or talk to IT or somebody to build something that was like a process or integrated with systems. But now with AI, we're seeing tools out there that are allowing people to do design, building products, building processes with a prompt. Like just like you can ask ChatGPT to help you with a job description, it can help you with a lot more. And because of that, you're giving people agency to do it themselves. Now, they don't have the time now to do it because they're so busy with other things. But the only way to actually save up that time is making a break out of the 9 to 5 kind of circle, automating a certain process, and then seeing that shave off 50% of the time. Now, also I think like when you're building this process, let's say your first process, whatever it is, you can do it yourself. But you can also break the work into two parts. So you can meet someone and you can describe like how you're doing it, how you want to do it, how you think AI could work, brainstorm. And then you can have somebody else, like a consultant or team or whatever, build it for you and come up with the results. Or you can, use your own time to do it, which I personally think is best because like learning it yourself is really empowering. But I honestly think that now you're going to be seeing like every company transform into this type of work where you're just like mapping up processes and adding AI where it belongs and automating. And so like for me, it's like how can we give HR more time? Like what is the trick in really doing that? Because that is the big struggle in just finding the time to do this.
So I think what HR does now is it has to do a lot of work about work. Analyzing processes, getting compliance stuff going, whatever it might be, right? This is another version of work about work, but it's far quicker, swifter, and bigger yields back in terms of time. So I think we've been trying to do some engineering, and I sort of opened the book I've written about that, about we are people and system and culture engineers. We need to engineer now with a digital sense, not just in the kind of analog sense that we've been doing it or crude digital, because that's a multiplier and an amplifier, and that will kind of hit exponential curves. So I don't think we have even started to see some of those returns, but until we get into it, like you said, we won't. But then after that, the space then becomes massive because we could sort out our knowledge and intelligence. We could get much more about scenarios that we run and almost simulate what a big change might look like to give data back to leaders that they could not even dream they could get now. So I think we're probably only a kind of couple year cycle away from that. If we take advantage of the tools in the way that you said. So like if you're in HR now and you're probably thinking I'm a bit overburdened, just hold fire for a couple of years because the big shift is coming and you will not believe the amount of things you'll be able to create value in. So I'm thinking that's where I'm kind of hedging my bets on that.
Yeah, and I agree with that one. And I think it's also like the stuff you can't do with AI today, but you almost can.
Oh my goodness,
Like you'll be able to do that really quick, like sooner than you think. And I've already seen that. The stuff that we were trying to do a year ago, we were like, why is it like it's missing like being able to take in more info or whatever. It wasn't working. Now it works every time, every single time. You can do a thing 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, and it will work. And you can build all sorts of breaks and things for things like hallucinations and like controlling how you tackle certain things in the environment, as long as it's done in a structured way. And so there is a lot of opportunities. I also think like there are so this whatever AI you chat with, right? Like the response you get, however you chat with it, you build it in a product. Like the context window is key. So like, what information does it have? Does it have access to tools? Have you somewhere written down how things are supposed to work? Like there's a lot of these building blocks. And if you structure them in the right way or you get the right systems in place to use it, you'll start to see the much better answers from an AI. And that's really one of the magics that I've seen as kind of the big success cases when companies have been able to write down their core work. It's incredible. And you add that to the AI, you kind of see the shift.
It's a bit like talent, isn't it? Because you invest in it, and then there are times when you catch that investment manifested in value. And so that's the human talent chain. It feels like we're doing the same thing with a digital thing now. We're investing in it and then we see what comes out. We're like, oh, wow, that is better because I did that up front. And there's something really nice about that loop that, again, we probably don't take account of and utilize enough.
But what do you think about Hung's idea that he brought in internally? He had this interesting idea at the event where he said that, let's say that you're a team, you don't just want to automate your work and then you're out of work.
Yeah.
What if orgs would kind of promise people that if they're able to save 50% of the time or something, that they get parts of that time back to develop their skills, to learn.
Sure.
What do you think about that idea?
Well, I know for a fact that there's a trail of evidence that tells you that people will find ways with which to use that sort of time much more inventively for themselves. So I think companies talk about, needing to be innovative. Well, you just say to them, hey, do you guess what? You've got more space now. So you go run a hackathon or you run some kind of innovation jam. You create a thing that you want to almost like sponsor, endorse and drive through this organization. You'll become like an intrapreneur, as they say. Right?
Yeah.
I absolutely think people would love that because it gives variety, it gives context. There's another way to loop it into reward. So we don't even have to just say, what do you want to stuff your head with? It's like, what do you want to play with? Yeah. What do you want to sort of experiment with? It could be partnerships, something civic, whatever it is. I think the organization will then say, look at what we're getting out of that person now. Look at how they're showing up. Yeah. Wow, we can use that. And they've had a good time doing it. That spark back into work would make a massive difference to the current anxiety compression that they have now.
Yeah.
So again, your point there is you'd liberate. You wouldn't just educate, you'd educate and liberate with that space back. And I mean, the benefits that would loop back into the organization, they can't even imagine.
Crazy, yeah. There was this hackathon story that I loved, which was a company that hosted one of these, was trying to figure out how can we just do something fun. Mm-hmm. This fun experiment was that they basically said, hey, we'd like to know more about what's happening in people's lives working for our company.
Yeah.
So somebody was like, hey, what if we just ask everybody, what was your highlight this week or month or whatever?
Yeah.
And they just fill it out once a month. And then that all goes into an AI and builds a newsletter with AI and sends it out to everybody on the first of the month. And they built that in 2 hours or something.
It's great.
But because they were able to build that, then they were like, look at all the things we could do with this. And so it was built for a completely different reason, but it just the light bulbs in the room. Yeah. And so I love that. Are you seeing orgs do these workshops? Are they? I mean,
those are the sort of things that in pioneering companies, they've almost always embedded in it as a kind of trade. But I think it will become a norm because people will sort of say, well, actually, if we have created efficiencies in terms of time, what do we want people to do? Well, hey, part of it is to educate themselves and actually to give us ideas and innovation. So I think that's something they're going to have to emerge to in that sort of context. But that is an example where, again, in the room, I said art always leads the way, right? And humor and fun,
I love that
form of art and play. So therefore, we see the possibilities through that lens because we're less inhibited. We aren't bothered about outcomes and ROI, but ironically, that's what we'll get from them. So then we can loop it back into the science of work. And people have kind of got a confidence and a real clear sense of how that play turned into something that's productive and useful, because it then loops back to the word you put a very strong emphasis on that I think we've got a very distorted view on: productivity. Yeah. So that's how we get productivity. It's like this human machine synergy and flow. That is a thing that I'm looking forward to about work in the next 3 to 4 years, that we'll look back on and go, how did we tolerate the rubbish it was in 2025? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
It's been a pleasure, Perry.
Thank
you so much for joining us at this amazing event.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
And for this wonderful talk.
Thank you very much.